I don't know. All right, there's the sound of the recording in progress.
All right.
Well, welcome everyone to California Times, and I'm Guy Meyer, and today it's November 5th, the Friday, and I have Jay Garfinkel of Alameda and Rick Johnson of Novato joining me. And we had a conversation a couple of months ago that just got put up on the internet, and it was really a fascinating, I thought, a very excellent conversation. We touched on some interesting subjects, and my apologies for the delay getting what we had talked about earlier on the internet for everybody to look at. But we're going to explore, we're going to get back into our discussion that began with both Rick and Jay's involvement and my involvement with the organization California Catalysts, that had to do with local government and community issues. And fundamentally, we had a housing issue going on in California of bills that were being passed. And I'm going to bring this to Jay. There was a series of bills being passed that the government, Sacramento, believes will solve the housing crisis or dramatically assist it. And the California Catalyst group took a different approach, had a different perspective, and was there to try to, I would say, prevent that from going into action. Jay, we were just talking about, rather than going into the details of this bill that is now law, as Sacramento attempts to solve this problem, what are you seeing that they are missing, or where are they going that is leaving many California citizens behind?
Well, I recently started being involved with some of this political stuff as after I retired and I have more time, and it has always concerned me as how ineffectual government is, how they tend to get things wrong, and I think it relates to some of the basic laws of organizational structure. Bureaucracy, the term was coined at the turn of the 20th century by Max Weber, who was I guess, sort of a social economist in Germany. And he's described bureaucracy saying that the authority didn't lay with the person, but with the office. You know, it's like you honor the president, the president, but not the person who's the president. And that the authority comes because somebody put that person into that office. And the bureaucrat's responsibility is to do the job that was assigned to him or her. That's how they're graded. Did they do the job? Didn't they do the job? And in return, they expect bonuses and salaries and being elevated. And then there's this concept that was published around 1969, I think, called the Peter Principle, which says that people will be promoted based on their abilities until they reach a level where they're incompetent. In other words, they're fine doing some task, but once they have to be in charge, they can't do it. And this is what we see in bureaucracies so frequently. And there are corollaries, like eventually everybody at the top will be incompetent. You know, along these lines. And I think this is what we see in government bureaucracies, and we see it in corporate bureaucracies. Somebody does well with getting the job done until they're appointed to management, and then they're totally they don't know what the peons are doing. They're just managing. So I think we see this in government too. And it's hard for me to know, are these people we put in office incompetent, or are they, dishonest isn't the right word, they're manipulative. They'll say what they need to get the job done. And it doesn't matter whether they're telling the truth or if it makes sense. And this is what we saw in a recent interview with State Senator McGuire, who represents Marin County, then up north going up the coast. And he was justifying SB 9, the aspect of it where they split, where a property owner can split his lot or her lot and put more units on it. The senator's goal evidently is to create more housing. One of the complaints about SB 9 is that it cuts the ability of people to create intergenerational wealth by having your house increase in value, and you pass it on to your children and on and on. And he made this, to me, absurd statement that splitting your lots will actually allow people to create more intergenerational wealth. Well, that might be for the first split. But once you've split the lot, now you have people in there who are probably going to be renters. There's no intergenerational wealth built there. So he was saying that to convince us that what they had done was right. And I don't think he's correct. But does he not understand the concept? Or is he just trying to convince people that he knows what he's doing?
Jay, in your what you've just said, I hear two interesting and different subjects that coming up to me. One is the element of our government being the elected officials, and there's the element of the government which is the people who have a permanent job that doesn't require being elected, right? And
right.
This interface, effective interface, and then you have of course the people that are supposed to be all for that are sort of out of the no longer in the picture once this activity gets going. And now you bring up the notion of a renter society, and is this actually creating wealth? Is anybody who becomes part of the renter world have an opportunity, or is this in any way in California an opportunity to gain wealth? Rick, what do you see about what I've got? We got two different things, but it all dovetails, I believe.
Well, I totally agree with Jay on that. As far as our elected officials being, they're either stupid or evil, but I remember something that Ralph Nader said one time, and he was talking about styles of management, and he preferred a management, he called it walking around management, where you don't disappear into the stratosphere. You get right down there with the peons, and you learn from them. And I think our politicians in Sacramento need a good dose of walking around and finding out the effect of all the sausage that they're making and how we have to put up with it. Good example was what went on in Virginia. I mean, I looked when I saw Terry McAuliffe say that the parents have no business being in school. I said, this kind of reminds me of when the Texas Senator Lloyd Bentsen was debating Quayle. And Quayle tried to compare himself with Jack Kennedy, and Benson says, "You're no Jack Kennedy." I mean, it's a gotcha moment, and it's perfect. And this whole thing that went on in Virginia, based on that McAuliffe remark, it was like an avalanche. That the next thing that happened, the National Teachers Association sent a letter to the Biden White House. Biden White House kicks it over to the Justice Department. 5 days later, Garland kicks out a letter saying that what's been going on with these school board meetings and all that, the school boards have been threatened and all that. Therefore, they were connecting it. They were trying to connect it to a almost a terrorist attack. And when you tell parents that they have no business with their school boards and they're terrorists if they do, then you get an election like you haven't seen in Virginia in a long time.
Well, thank you for putting that in that nice sequential historical element. My sense is that you're pretty accurate as you describe that sequence of events there. And,
well, I've got a piece coming up for Cal Matters on that. So they said, okay, where did you get your source info from?
Great.
So that'll be in Cal Matters in maybe a week.
Jay, go ahead. What do you, when you hear?
Oh, when we refer to the politicians as evil, I don't think it's innate evil. I think what happens is many of them are well-intentioned. Some of them are looking for power right from the start.
Yep.
But many might be well-intentioned, and then they reach a level where they have to do something, and they don't necessarily know what they're doing. They just have to do it. And if they don't know what to do, then somebody higher up the food chain tells them what to do.
Right.
And it's the thing about, if I tell you to jump, if you tell me to jump, I just want to know how high you want me to jump. And I think this is just, it's a problem with organizational structures, especially representative organizations. Like, look what we have with ABAG.
Oh.
Our mayor here in Alameda represented the city of Alameda. But when it came to ABAG, she just did whatever they said the HCD said they had to do. She wasn't representing our interests. So, and that's sort of it's inherent in representative organizations. For instance, if you are a member of a department and you represent them on the board of directors. Now, who you speak for your department, or are your decisions aimed at making the organization better? You're in sort of there's a dichotomy there. And so what you have is somebody goes into the assembly to represent their community, and the next thing you know is that they are doing whatever it takes to make the party stronger. Well, wait a minute, we didn't put you there to parrot whatever the party leaders say, and that becomes extremely. It's not democratic here in California, little d. There's one party, so there's no real conversation. The people at the top say, this is what you're going to do, but the people at the top don't really have contact with the people at the bottom, the people who are really affected by these things. They're living in neighborhoods where there are never going to be lot splits, so they can tell other people, you split your lot. So I see a lot of this as just being inherent elements of organizations, of bureaucracy, and I'm not sure how we can do anything about that. That I see it that we're sort of stuck in this conundrum. How do we make things better when the people we assign the task to lose touch with what that task is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And it becomes more about personal power.
I think that the belief that they are supposed to be doing that they're now here to do something, right? They've got the job, and now what are we going to do? From my own experience in the corporate world, which wasn't that much, just a little bit of involvement in the food chain of corporate America. I feel that it mirrors the governmental element too, where the directive to these little units of the entity, the corporation that are scattered across the country, just as Rick says, there will not be somebody walking on the floors. Their first job when they become the executive is not to go talk to the people who they're going to be making this directive to improve things. They feel this important weight on their shoulders to just do it. And of course, ask for the best consultants, but not to have their feet on the floor.
Well, I remember Jack Kennedy's, where he got a Pulitzer for Profiles of Courage. And he had a story about when it came down to this Kansas senator, and his name escapes me, to cast the deciding vote to impeach and convict Andrew Johnson. He said, he said to everybody, when it came to me, all of a sudden, as I'm looking in the well of the Senate, I'm looking into my open grave, because he had to do what was right. And he said he voted against it. And what happened to him, he was hung in effigy for God knows how many cities back east. And on top of it, he was totally defeated in the next election, and he died penniless. But he had the balls to vote against the radical Republicans.
That's a great story. I'm pleased and a little inspired that you pull that one out of your archives there. Profiles in Courage makes me want to read it, because
that's one of my favorite. That's one of my favorite parts of that book.
Well,
that story.
It brings up it's a real tangent to jump into. I'm not going to jump into Kennedy's life, but yet there was a man who lost his life basically because he would not. He was going to stand for something. He was not going to stand for. It wasn't just incompetence. It was worse than incompetence. It was something, just malevolent in the government that he was going to not be a part of.
Oh, leave J. Edgar Hoover out of this.
What's that?
Leave J. Edgar Hoover out of this.
No, yeah, but this will be a different show. So,
well, yeah.
Go ahead.
Let's not lose sight of the way he got into the Senate and became president. I mean, his father, a bootlegger, manipulated the election. They actually put somebody else in with a similar name to his opponent.
Oh,
so that split the votes against Kennedy. And he was a notorious womanizer, but everybody loves him. It's just creating this image. And he didn't say, "Ask not what you can do for your country." I think it was Peter Salinger. Was that the right name?
Peter Salinger.
His speechwriter wrote that.
Yeah, but every president has speechwriters. Reagan, wonderful.
They
speech.
do.
We can dismiss all of their speeches, and that might be a good idea. But I think that when you look at that speech,
they're motivating.
Too much
they're
time in
motivate
defending Kennedy's legacy, but I think his legacy is absolutely powerful and huge because he stood up to his military men who basically were advocating a first strike when the Cuba crisis was coming up,
Right.
and he stood up against the CIA. Anyways, we're really
Yeah,
jumping.
no, I
off.
know. What I'm saying is that there's a flip side, and
Sure.
as well as
Humans.
intended.
We're humans.
That's all. It's not pure good. It's not pure bad.
No, that's
But
right. That's right.
within
We
this,
can go to
the structure tends to push us to that incompetent level. There's a thing called the Peter Plateau, which says that sooner or later, all top level jobs will be filled by incompetent people because everybody rises up. So all the jobs are incompetent. That's probably an extreme, but I see that as explaining why government so frequently gets it wrong. They may have something, they may have some good idea, but they execute it incorrectly because the people in charge of the execution of it, they don't have any touch with what's really going on below.
Right.
And I think you brought up a partisanship, or that they're there to fulfill. Maybe it was Rick who said that they're there to fulfill the party more than the broader sense of they end up dismissing whatever the other party says. In where our world is, it's so highly dismissed that liberals aren't allowed to have a conservative thought. Conservatives are, we're just
We're seeing that in
blinded.
spades now with the Republican Party.
Sorry.
I mean, we're seeing that in spades with the Republican Party. In other words, the individual Republican legislators, probably some of them are good people, but they're not exercising independent judgment. They're doing what the
Well,
people.
you see, that's interesting that you say that, because I tend to feel like the Democrats have become blinded. There's nothing liberal anymore about being liberal.
Right.
It's a
There you
badge,
go.
it's a uniform, and it no longer seems to carry that word of open-mindedness anymore. It seems to be very harsh judgmentally. And anyways, well, this is interesting because this is now we're talking about how human perception. How about this? If I jump to one other level of the inherent problem, is, and I brought it up last time, population growth. Now, developed countries across the world, populations plateauing, right? And this plateau in some developed countries, you would think, takes the pressure off issues of housing or density, or the more you keep having this pressure of more and more people, it seems like we're ending up creating a never-ending series of more and more problems. And
yeah, but unfortunately, in China, where they had the rule of one baby,
right,
one family, and if the baby was seen to be female,
right.
all these parents were having abortions and waiting for the male baby to come along. Now you've got a scarcity of females for that generation, and on top of it, they end up marrying their cousins.
Well, I mean, we're not gonna. I don't think the issue, I think, is how do we export the values, and maybe indeed the structure of wealth, libraries, schooling, healthcare, that is in America to the rest of the world. How do we get?
You just say, don't have any kids you can't pay for.
Well,
and don't look to the government to pay for them.
But
well,
we pay for them.
Of course, but it should not be that way.
Well, I don't know.
all right. So,
in China, actually, that policy you're talking about has created a situation where they don't have enough young people to to support the older generation now.
Right.
And that's become a concern. Now they're encouraging more births. I think Japan also has a similar situation where they're running out of the young people. In the United States,
Yes.
we need all these people working so that we three will continue to get our social security checks.
We'll just open up the borders.
Yeah.
Well, it feels like obviously, whatever the world is going to be 10 years from now, or 20 years from now, or 30 years from now, we're in a state of transformation, which is, I guess, always been the case. And so we're watching these factors in the present that we can only look upon with, maybe apprehension, or hard to see positive in it. But you would hope, I feel like sustainability. What does that mean? To be able to, not destroy the forest in order to
Right.
take some of the forest products. How to, the ocean. How do we deal with that? And I feel like we can do it. We have to do it, and there are examples of doing it. But I feel like if we don't encourage, this is sort of like my nouveau Republican state, though I'd like a third party myself. But if individuals, I think if the younger generation could grasp that they themselves are the source of the solutions, the problem, in any society, whether it's Honduras or California or Lithuania, you really want a community of people that are not at each other's throat, that you can leave your house and leave the door unlocked. It may be idealistic, but it's sort of like civics lessons of how important it is that the individual try to stand up and do the right thing.
Sure.
But, the human race may need this stuff to go on. There's Malthus, who wrote towards the end of the 19th century, in addressing population controls, that there's always going to be pestilence, war, and there was a third one, starvation maybe, would control the population. And that's so in a way, you have all these incidents of genocide in Africa and in Indonesia and other places around the world. They're killing millions of people. Well, that helps control the population. In 100 years ago, we had the Spanish flu, killed millions of people. By the way, Weber, who I mentioned earlier, who created this concept of bureaucracy, he died of the Spanish flu.
Wow.
So, and now we have the pandemic. So there's always going to be these things, with the wars and such. And maybe we need the microplastics to kill off a bunch of the fish and cause these problems, and we get starvation. But enough of the human race persists, and we continue to live. So, maybe we need people killing their neighbors. I don't know. So, that's kind of cynical, but
it's
when the time comes, we will have ways we have to control, say, population growth. We'll run out of food. Well, we're getting more and more efficient in producing food. I mean, now you take the drought, where the food in California is going to be producing less. So there's all this, it's dynamic, it's in a state of flux. And the human race, I think, is resilient, and we will adapt to these awful situations that we're in, climate change, polluting the oceans.
Yeah, but artificially, you've got the Chinese encouraging smoking. I mean, big time. There's no, hey, don't smoke anymore. It's encouraged. You have your ads on billboards over there for cigarettes and all that. Hey, they're going, "Psh, let's
I
get
didn't
rid
know
of the
that.
soldier population."
I thought you were referring to coal fires when you said smoke.
That too.
Well, I think, guys, we've haven't exactly solved much, but we brought up some interesting subjects, and I think there's something to exactly what you're saying there, Rick, in terms of Rick, Jay, and Rick, the resilience of humanity that will have to react to whatever
Sure.
comes along in the moment, and we don't quite know how things are unfolding, and it could be something dark like microbeads killing off fish
Yeah.
that, I mean, what we have, like I just saw for the COVID issues, that the world population growth went from, like, I don't know what it was, 80 million. It barely made a bleep in the growth of the world population.
Yeah.
It continues to expand by about 80 million a year. Citizens, yeah, I guess they are. We're all citizens of the planet, whether it means anything or not.
Sure. Well, yeah, I think the more people that get nuked up, we will be in a world of hurt. You get some of you get a smaller country than even North Korea, and they get nuked up.
No, nuked up. I was wondering what you were referring
Oh
to.
yeah. And all of a sudden everybody, it could be World War I again, where everybody piles in and, I'm for that. Oh, I'm for that,
Oh boy. All right. Well, let's say on a positive note here, Rick, you want to come on? Give me some positive note here.
Okay. I want to take $153, like that truck driver in New Jersey, and win the primary for what was that? The state attorney general's seat, and then only spend the guy that was running for his seat spent $700,000. The truck driver, he spent $5,000, and all his political commercials were off of his telephone. He just used a little cell phone, made some movies, boom.
That's beautiful. I
I
like
love
that.
it.
Yes.
Well, I hope, I really hope that Susan brings that up, because there it is right there. There is some hope.
Well, there is a myth that somehow, unless we have huge amount of money, that you can't achieve in politics. But I think that what you just said, Rick, brings up this other thing, that if you have somebody with some determination, has got the right message, there's way more freedom still than we know. We just need more people to harness it.
Yeah.
Jay, go ahead, finish it up for me. This will be the last. We'll close it out.
Well, I think that we can have well-intended politicians at the start. They get elected and they've got good goals in mind. Then they get into Sacramento or maybe Washington, and they feel that the only way they can accomplish their goals is to go along with everyone else. In other words, if I don't suck up to the boss, I'm not going to even be on a committee, let alone become a committee chair.
There you go.
And so they have to kind of put their own stuff on hold because nobody's going to go along with them. And then by the time they get some kind of power, well, maybe they're not all that interested in that initial goal. They're now a party person, pure and simple. So.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. It's been a good conversation again.
Yeah.
And thank you. And we'll be
Okay.
in touch. We'll
have a good weekend. Yeah.
We may try it again.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Take care, guys.
Okay. You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Guy.
See everybody. And
Take care, Jay.
subscribe, anybody, people on this site. Will you subscribe to my site? Or tell
All
your
right.
friends. All right.
Well, I sent the last one up to my sister in Alaska.
Yeah.
And she wrote back and said, "You're losing more hair."
You know,
That's
what's,
a low blow.
what's family for, right? That's family for you.
That's
All
right.
right. Cheers,
Take
guys.
care.
All right,
All
see
right.
you.
Bye-bye.